But I have to say, certainly gives me a lot of pleasure, and I'm sure it gives Mark a lot of pleasure to think that the music's got a certain timeless quality to it. And this is, I mean, I look at music like that myself. When I'm listening to music at home, I tend to look at things from a point of view of, quality. Will it last the sort of the amount of times I'm going to listen to it? I keep coming back to the same things, and I think this happens with the Straits stuff as well to a certain degree. It doesn't suit everybody, but music doesn't. But we seem to have a pretty good following.
In those days when you were writing these tunes and recording them, did you think that they would still be contemporary in 2009 and probably will be like classical music for the next 100 years because they're so still there?
Oh, golly, that's quite a big question, isn't it? One would like to think so. I think that when you are making music, you make it in the way that the song dictates. The song really dictates how you make it, and with something like, we talked a little bit earlier about Telegraph Road, for instance. I mean, that's a story in itself. It's got a whole historical context with this particular road. I think it's in Detroit. I think it's up in the north of America, and it's really telling a story about something. So you can't really tell a story in a short period of time when it's got this kind of depth to it. And that's probably the reason why Telegraph Road is 12 minutes long, or whatever it is. And as I was saying to you earlier, it took a long time to get that together. All these elements are very important when you're making music.
What was the best song you ever recorded then?
Oh, crikey. Crikey Moses. Well, I hope Mark's not listening right now. No, you can't really pick out individual songs. I mean, I've obviously got my favourites. I mean, I think that, for instance, I think Romeo and Juliet is probably one of the most beautiful love songs that's ever been written. And I think Money for Nothing is probably one of the just a classic track and we played it last night in Sardinia at this charity function. And as soon as you do the opening chords, it's just so recognisable. Everybody just knows what's coming up, and they just go, yes, and it has that good effect on people, which is wonderful.
A lot's been written and a lot's been said about how you guys got together, and the thing I love about it is you all still seem friends. There doesn't seem to be a difficulty, although you've disbanded. Why aren't you still around today as Dire Straits? Obviously you can do this stuff as well. Yeah,
it's an interesting question. I think that, as far as Mark and I were concerned, in 1993 we felt we'd reached a point where we probably couldn't take the machine any further. And we'd had a pretty good run. I mean, 17 odd years or whatever it was, which is a pretty good time for a band to A, stay together, and B, be creative. And I think we were pretty happy to say, well, let's quit while we're ahead. And I think that's probably the reason why we stayed friends.
Did that ever bother you that Mark took all the glory?
No, not at all. I mean, there's it's a typical group situation. If you've got somebody who sings, plays the guitar, and writes the songs, then they're going to take the limelight. And I think initially he was quite reluctant to do that. He wasn't comfortable with it, but then he found a way of dealing with it, and dealt with it extremely well, and would communicate with people at a level where he wanted to. But that takes practice and it takes time. And within a band, and if you ask any band member this, everybody has a place and is part of a structure which makes the thing work. And it's interesting because, in the 17 odd years that he and I were together, I think we had one disagreement which lasted about 10 minutes. So that's not bad going, really. We just seemed to agree on what direction we were going on, and I was good at certain elements of the band structure, and he was comfortable doing what he did in it, and we just came together, and it wasn't a problem.
Obviously, Mark's going to take all the glory because he's at the front, but how important are you to the sound on stage? What is it exactly you do?
What do I do? Well, I'm part of the engine room, really. I think that's the way I would look at it. If you listen to the Straits music, you'll hear a pretty solid rhythm bass and drum track, which is, in a sense, as far as I'm concerned, gives the music its pulse. And we used to concentrate very heavily at the beginning of recordings to get that right, and that's exactly the way that I approach the situation now when I'm working with Greg and the rest of the boys. Is you get the engine room right, you get the foundation right. It's a bit like painting a picture. You get the foundation of the picture right, and then you can put something on top which makes sense.
What is your favourite song if we had to play a Dire Straits song now?
I think probably Brothers in Arms. That's sort of that would often bring me to tears sometimes when we were playing it, because of the emotional connections with it all and what it meant to really I saw that as being a very important song as far as the band's relationship was concerned. Well, art of course is pure isolation. I mean, it's something that is a pretty, for me, is a fairly essential element of my life now, and I set about becoming an artist, a proper artist, rather than just fiddling around in between tours. When we finished with the Straits in '93, and it filled a very large emotional and creative gap. And I think that they probably helped me get over the change in life, because when you've been doing something 20 years, you think, actually, what else is there? That's, as far as you're concerned, that's your life. You don't know anything else. Touring, recording, standing up in front of people, doing interviews if you like, and all the rest of the stuff that goes with it. And suddenly, it's just everything's changed. So I immersed myself in painting, and I think that really helped me to move over the transition period. Times I wasn't interested in actually working with music any longer. I thought, I'm going to give myself a big break. So I concentrated on the art, and it took me about 7 or 8 years to really find my own voice. And I think my first show was in the year 2000. And I had dealers come round to the studio before that. They say, well, you're not ready yet. In other words, it's not very good. And I said, I know. I said, I just want some opinions. That's all. You can say, I don't care what you say. It doesn't matter to me. Say whatever you like. And then suddenly I bumped into somebody, and they said, are you still painting? This was a dealer. And I said, yes. And they said, can I come and have a look? I said, yeah, of course you can. I said, it's changed a bit. Anyway, they came down, and they were there for 10 minutes and said, do you want to do a show? And I went, oh, okay, right, okay, fine. So that was it. And, I've been doing a show every year since 2000, really.
If people want to find out about your art and, of course, the new album and everything else that's going on in your life with the tour, where do they go? What website?
To my website, johnillsley.com.
What's more thrilling, an audience sat in front of you listening to you play your music, or watching them look at your art?
Well, they're very different. I mean, I just remember last night, for instance, we played in front of, I don't know, it was probably a couple hundred people. There was no more than that in this charity situation. And they were having a ball. And as a consequence, the band's having a ball. I mean, it's just a great feeling to have this wonderful sort of mutual excitement and enjoyment in a room. And then people will come on Thursday night or Friday and see the art, and they'll ponder it and look at it, and it's a different kind of experience. They'll talk to you about it, and it's a different form of communication. It's all communication. That's the way I see it. And music communicates in a certain way, and art does. I mean, you and I'll look at the same picture, and I'll go, I quite like that actually. And then you look at something else, and you'll say, oh, what about that? And I go, not my cup of tea. And that's what's so interesting about painting, is that it gets you straight away. You either like it or you don't, unless it's just mediocre, sort of ordinary kind of stuff. I'm talking about the stuff that's slightly edgy.
Before we go, what's it like being a sex symbol? Because let's face it, the bassist in any band is always the man who gets the woo.
Woo. Well, I've had plenty of woos in my time. We better not go down that track. I mean, that's a rather an odd thing to sort of contemplate, but we've had a certain amount of fun in the past, if you know what I mean.
Was it rock and roll? I mean, you've been around the world. You've sold 120 million albums, something like that. How do you describe those days now, looking back on them?
Well, fascinating, actually. A fascinating journey, more than anything else, from beginning to end. The initial time of Mark and I living in a council flat in Deptford in southeast London, unable to pay the rent of £9.50, to being able to afford a very nice house and a very nice car, and But then you've got this journey, this incredible journey you've been on, which it's difficult to describe to anybody else. It's just magnificent. It's fantastic. I feel extremely privileged to have been on that journey.
Thank you very much for talking to me. It's a great honour and a great pleasure. This new CD is in your stores now, and it's tremendous. If you like Dire Straits, you're going to love it. It's got the heart of a Dire Straits song all the way through it. Beautiful You is the album. What's the best song on it then?
Oh gosh, that's an interesting question. I think One is a pretty good song on there, but also I'm very fond of Loving You. I think that actually, placed in the right situation, could be quite a major song. The thing about Loving You is a simple message which we've all been through. And I think if you listen to it, then most people can relate to it, and that's important in a song. Well, I'm deeply unattractive. I have no idea what you're talking about. Well, I can't. I'm not going to get into whether you're attractive or unattractive, but you look all right to me. I mean,
John Illsley, thank you so much for talking to us. It's a great honour, and thank you for the memories, and thank you for the songs.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to meet you and talk to you. Thank you.